I can finally live my life now. That was the first thing Vanessa said, 2 days after being told her billionaire husband had died at sea. No tears, no waiting, just freedom, and another man moving into the mansion he built. She didn't know the truth. The man she replaced so quickly wasn't dead. He was watching, and what he uncovered would turn her ambition into her downfall. Let me ask you, does love deserve patience, or does opportunity always come first? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. Adrian Blackwell did not build his fortune by believing in words. Words were cheap. Promises were cheaper. He believed in patterns, how people moved when they thought no one was watching, how voices changed when money entered the room, how loyalty thinned when comfort became guaranteed. Adrian grew up in a city that rewarded sharp instincts and punished softness. Downtown Chicago taught him that early. His mother trusted the wrong man. His father trusted the wrong partner. Adrian trusted no one. By 42, he was worth 9 figures, tech acquisitions, quiet real estate plays, data infrastructure contracts that cities depended on but never talked about. Adrian Blackwell wasn't loud money. He was invisible power, the kind that watched from above and never needed applause. Then he met Vanessa Hale. They met in a glass-walled charity boardroom overlooking the river. Vanessa spoke calmly, confidently, without trying to impress anyone. She talked about impact, legacy, alignment. She never asked what Adrian did for a living. That alone intrigued him. Vanessa was intelligent, elegant, controlled. She didn't chase attention, it followed her. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. Hope. He courted her cautiously. No headlines, no extravagant displays. He wanted to know who she was without the benefits. Vanessa spoke about loyalty, about partnership, about standing beside someone when the lights went out. She said she wanted a husband, not a lifestyle. Against his better judgment, Adrian believed her. They married quietly at City Hall. No press, no spectacle, just 2 signatures and a promise spoken in low voices. Vanessa wore white. Adrian wore certainty. 3 months later, Adrian boarded his private jet bound for Zurich. He never arrived. The report hit global news within hours. Aircraft malfunction, severe weather, lost contact over the Atlantic, search efforts suspended after 72 hours. No survivors, no recoverable remains. The ocean, they said, does not return what it takes. There would be no body, no funeral, no proof, only absence. Vanessa received the call alone in the mansion. She screamed. She dropped the phone. She slid down the marble wall and cried into her hands. The house staff heard it all. Her grief was loud, dramatic, convincing, for 56 minutes. After that, the tears stopped. The next morning, Vanessa woke up in silk sheets and stared at the ceiling. The house felt too large, too quiet, too empty. Adrian's scent still lingered in the closet. His watch sat untouched on the nightstand. By noon, she had stopped wearing black. By evening, she was on the phone, whispering, smiling, pacing barefoot across the living room. Her voice sounded lighter than it had in weeks. By the second day, the mansion no longer felt like a place of loss. It felt like opportunity. Caleb Moore arrived just after sunset. He didn't come through the front gate like a guest. He entered like someone who already belonged. 2 suitcases. No hesitation. Security footage later showed Vanessa running to him, laughing, wrapping her arms around his neck beneath a framed photo of Adrian that still hung in the foyer. Caleb had always been there, in the background, in the past, in the spaces Adrian never thought to check. A former business associate, an old flame Vanessa never quite let go of. A man who believed wealth was something to be taken, not built. That night, Vanessa ordered champagne. On the 3rd day, Adrian's clothes were boxed. His personal files were sealed. His office door was locked, not out of reverence, but impatience. Vanessa told the staff she needed a fresh start. She told friends she felt free. She laughed more than she cried. What Vanessa did not know, what she could never imagine, was that Adrian Blackwell was watching everything. From a secured estate outside Omaha, far from oceans and headlines, Adrian sat in a dim room filled with screens, live feeds, financial dashboards, audio logs. Every room in the mansion whispered back to him. Every call Vanessa made echoed in his ears. He hadn't faked his death out of cruelty. He had done it out of necessity. Adrian had always wondered what love looked like when the safety net vanished, when the money went silent, when there was nothing left to gain. He needed truth, raw, undeniable truth. He expected patience, confusion, maybe even restraint. What he saw instead arrived in 48 hours. Vanessa smiling, Vanessa planning, Vanessa replacing. Adrian didn't flinch. He didn't rage. He simply leaned back and exhaled slowly, the way he did before hostile takeovers. "So that's the price of loyalty," he murmured to the empty room. On the fourth night, Vanessa hosted a small dinner. No mourning, no hesitation, just ambition dressed in silk. Caleb sat at the head of the table like a king who thought the throne was permanent. Vanessa raised her glass and said, "To new beginnings." Miles away, Adrian closed his eyes. The test was over, and the consequences were just beginning. By the fifth day, Vanessa stopped pretending. The black dresses disappeared from her wardrobe. The somber tone in her voice vanished. Even the mansion staff noticed it. The shift from grief to control, from widow to ruler. She no longer asked, she instructed. She no longer hesitated, she decided. Money had a way of giving people courage. Caleb settled in quickly, too quickly for a man who was supposed to be a visitor. His shoes lined the closet beside Adrian's. His cologne replaced Adrian's aftershave. At night, laughter echoed through hallways that had once carried only quiet conversations and restrained affection. Vanessa told herself she deserved this. She told herself that life was short, that love was fragile, that survival required decisiveness. Adrian was gone. The ocean had claimed him, and she refused to drown in loyalty to a ghost. Still, there were moments, brief, unwelcome moments, when doubt crept in, like when she passed Adrian's study and paused, her hand hovering over the door handle, or when she reached for her phone instinctively, ready to tell him something trivial, before remembering there was no one left to tell. She crushed those moments quickly. Emotion was weakness. That was something Adrian himself had taught her, ironically. On the seventh day, Vanessa called Adrian's primary legal firm. She spoke calmly, confidently, as if rehearsed. She asked about estate access, corporate voting rights, and asset liquidity. She mentioned grief, uncertainty, responsibility. She emphasized her position as the surviving spouse. The lawyer listened carefully. Then he said something that irritated her. "There are safeguards in place," he said. "Mr. Blackwell was, meticulous." Vanessa smiled tightly. "I'm sure he trusted me." There was a pause on the line. "Mr. Blackwell trusted systems," the lawyer replied. She ended the call frustrated but not worried. Caleb wasn't worried at all. "They're stalling," he said later that night, swirling whiskey in Adrian's favorite glass. "Old money tricks. But time is on our side." Caleb had always believed confidence was a substitute for preparation. He encouraged Vanessa to move faster, to file documents, initiate transfers, assert authority. He spoke of expansion, of control, of finally stepping into a life they had only whispered about before. What Caleb didn't know was that every document Vanessa touched lit up a screen in Nebraska. Adrian watched as her signature triggered silent alerts. He watched as she attempted to access accounts she didn't fully understand. Each move was recorded, each misstep archived. "She's rushing," said Marcus Feld, Adrian's chief of security, standing behind him. Too fast. Adrian nodded. That's how people reveal themselves. Flashback memories surfaced uninvited. Vanessa standing across from him during their engagement saying, "I just want peace. I want stability." Vanessa promising she wasn't interested in power. Vanessa saying, "I'd love you even if you lost everything." Adrian let the memories play out like old footage from a different life. The eighth night brought another dinner party. This one was larger, louder. Vanessa invited people who had never stepped foot in the mansion before. New friends, opportunists, distant acquaintances who suddenly remembered her number. Laughter spilled onto the balcony overlooking the city. Music thumped against glass walls. Someone asked, "Isn't it too soon?" Vanessa lifted her chin. "Life doesn't wait." Adrian watched from his screens as Caleb kissed her openly, his hand resting possessively on her waist. Adrian didn't look away. Pain wasn't useful. Information was. Behind the scenes, Adrian moved quietly. He authorized audits, activated dormant clauses, alerted federal regulators under anonymous advisement. The empire he built wasn't designed to collapse. It was designed to expose. Vanessa woke up the next morning to an unexpected email. Her temporary access to one of Adrian's subsidiary accounts had been denied. She frowned, annoyed more than alarmed. By noon, another request failed. By evening, her calls went unanswered. Caleb waved it off. Technical issues, corporations love bureaucracy. But Vanessa felt something shift beneath her confidence. On the 10th day, she received a formal notice, a freeze, not total, but deliberate, surgical. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Widows didn't get questioned. They got comfort. They got control. That night, she couldn't sleep. She paced the bedroom Adrian once shared with her, the bed now unfamiliar despite its luxury. She stared at the door, half expecting it to open, half fearing it might. Across the country, Adrian stood alone on the edge of his estate's balcony, watching a storm roll across flat land. He thought he'd feel satisfaction by now. He didn't. What he felt was clarity. "Give it a few more days," he said quietly. "Let her finish." Marcus studied him. And then? Adrian's jaw tightened. Then the truth walks through the front door. Back in the mansion, Vanessa sat across from Caleb, her confidence cracking for the first time. "What if something's wrong?" she asked. Caleb laughed, but it sounded thin. "Wrong how? He's dead." Vanessa didn't respond. For the first time since the call, the word dead didn't sound final. It sounded unfinished. By the 12th day, the city began to whisper, not loudly, not publicly, just enough for Vanessa to notice the shift when she entered rooms. Conversations paused. Smiles arrived a second too late. People who once leaned in now leaned back. Money sensed uncertainty the way animals sensed weather. Vanessa spent that morning on the phone, her voice sharpened by irritation. She tried to disguise as composure. She spoke to bankers, advisors, executives who once returned her calls immediately. Now they spoke carefully, formally, as if every word was being weighed, because it was. Across state lines, Adrian's team, lean, silent, loyal, watched the dominoes fall. No grand gestures, no dramatic moves, just pressure applied in. The right places, contracts reviewed, authorities notified, compliance audits initiated, everything legal, everything clean. Adrian didn't want revenge. He wanted exposure. Flashbacks returned to him in fragments. Vanessa insisting on separate passwords for independence. Vanessa asking too many questions about contingencies. Vanessa smiling whenever his name appeared in headlines. He had mistaken curiosity for care. On the 13th night, Vanessa confronted Caleb. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse him outright. She simply asked one question that hung in the air like smoke. "Did you know about the safeguards?" Caleb froze for half a second too long. "That's billionaire paranoia," he said. "You're overthinking." Vanessa studied him, really studied him, for the first time without desire blurring her vision. She noticed how his confidence leaned on assumption, how his plans relied on speed rather than certainty, how easily he dismissed risk. Adrian had never dismissed risk. That realization unsettled her more than any frozen account. The next morning brought another letter, this one sealed, official, heavy with consequence. It outlined potential irregularities, requested documentation, implied scrutiny. Vanessa's hands shook openly now. "Why is this happening?" she whispered. Caleb paced. "Someone's trying to scare you." "Who?" He didn't answer. That evening, Vanessa stood alone in the mansion's living room, staring at Adrian's portrait still mounted above the fireplace. She had forgotten to take it down. Or maybe she hadn't wanted to. His eyes seemed sharper now, watching. "You're gone," she said aloud, as if daring the silence to contradict her. It didn't, but somewhere deep inside, doubt began to harden into fear. Meanwhile, Adrian prepared, not emotionally, strategically. He reviewed transcripts, audio clips, footage, conversations Vanessa assumed were private. Each one told the same story, calculation masked as grief, ambition disguised as resilience. He had asked himself once if testing her was cruel. Now he asked himself why he had needed the test at all. The 14th day arrived with rain, a gray, unremarkable morning that carried no hint of what was coming. Vanessa woke to the sound of footsteps downstairs, heavy, deliberate, not staff, not Caleb. She wrapped herself in a robe and descended the stairs cautiously. Men in dark suits stood in the foyer, their presence controlled, authoritative. Behind them, the front doors stood open. "Mrs. Blackwell," one of them said, "we need to ask you a few questions." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "On what grounds?" she asked. "Routine verification," he replied. "It won't take long." Caleb appeared behind her, his face pale. "What is this?" No one answered him. The questions were precise. Timelines, transfers, communications. Vanessa responded smoothly at first, relying on poise she had perfected over years of curated appearances. But precision cuts both ways. When they left, they took copies. Vanessa closed the door and leaned against it, breath shallow. "This isn't normal," she said. Caleb swallowed. "We'll fix it." But the words sounded hollow. That night, Vanessa dreamed of water, dark, endless water. She stood at the edge of something vast, calling Adrian's name, unsure whether she wanted him to answer. The 15th day broke with sunlight and silence. No calls, no emails, no reassurance. Caleb packed a bag. "I need to clear my head," he said, "just for a day." Vanessa watched him zip the suitcase. "You're leaving," she said. He hesitated. "I'm stepping back." The door closed behind him without ceremony. Vanessa stood alone in the mansion, surrounded by things she thought she owned. Across the country, Adrian buttoned his jacket. "It's time," he said. His voice held no triumph, only resolve. He boarded a plane, commercial this time, no secrecy, no shadows, just a man returning to a life that had moved on without him. As the city skyline came into view, Adrian felt something unexpected stir in his chest. Not anger, not satisfaction, finality. Vanessa sat at the dining table that evening, staring at her phone, refreshing screens that offered nothing but silence. Then the doorbell rang. She flinched. For a moment she considered not answering. Then she stood, smoothed her robe, and walked toward the door, unaware that the truth she had outrun was finally standing on the other side. The doorbell rang again. Vanessa stood still, her heart hammering as if it already knew what her mind refused to accept. The mansion had been too quiet all day, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears. Whoever stood on the other side of that door was not expected, not welcome. She opened it anyway. At first, her eyes refused to focus. The man standing there wore a dark coat, rain still clinging to the fabric. His hair was slightly longer than she remembered, his face leaner, older somehow, but the posture straight, controlled, unmistakable, pulled something loose inside her chest. The world tilted. "No," she whispered. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. The door closed behind him with a soft, final sound. Vanessa's knees buckled. She reached for the wall, fingers scraping marble as if it could anchor her to reality. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Adrian Blackwell was alive, not a ghost, not a memory, not a hallucination born of guilt and fear. Alive. "I told them not to announce me," Adrian said calmly, removing his coat. His voice was exactly the same, low, measured, unhurried. "I wanted to see your face." Vanessa sank onto the nearest chair, breath coming in shallow bursts. This isn't possible." Adrian looked around the room. The rearranged furniture, the missing photographs, the absence of his presence everywhere. "Oh, it's possible," he said. "It was very possible. You just didn't wait long enough to find out." Her hands trembled violently now. "They said you were dead. They said there was no body," Adrian corrected, "and you decided that was enough." The words landed harder than a slap. Vanessa shook her head, tears spilling over. "You don't understand. I was alone. I was grieving." Adrian met her gaze, his eyes unreadable. "You replaced me in 48 hours. Silence swallowed the room. "I needed comfort," she said weakly. "I needed someone." "You needed access," Adrian replied, "and you needed speed." The front door opened again. This time men in suits entered, calm, official, unstoppable. They carried folders, warrants, authority. Vanessa watched them in a daze as they spread documents across the dining table she had celebrated at just nights before. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Documentation," Adrian said. "Records, footage, financial trails. Everything you assumed. No one was watching." One of the men spoke. "Mrs. Blackwell, you are under investigation for conspiracy, attempted financial manipulation, and unauthorized access to corporate assets." Her head snapped up. "You can't do this. I'm his wife." Adrian looked at her then, really looked at her. "You were," he said quietly, "and that status came with trust. You violated it." She crawled out of the chair and dropped to her knees. "I loved you," she sobbed. "I still do." Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. Not pain, not regret, but recognition. This was who she was when cornered, emotional, desperate, performative. "Love doesn't evacuate this fast," he said. "It doesn't clear out closets. It doesn't invite another man into the bed." One of the agents cleared his throat. "We'll need you to come with us, ma'am." Vanessa looked up at Adrian, panic overtaking pride. "Please, you don't have to destroy me." Adrian crouched in front of her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "You destroyed yourself," he said. "I just stopped you from destroying me." Caleb never returned. By morning, headlines broke, not with Adrian's return, but with the investigation. Analysts speculated, commentators debated. Some called Adrian ruthless, others called him brilliant. Vanessa spent the night in a holding room, stripped of silk and certainty. Her calls went unanswered. Friends disappeared. Support evaporated. By dawn, the marriage was legally challenged. Fraud, misrepresentation, bad faith. The union that began quietly ended the same way, without witnesses, without warmth. Adrian stood alone in the mansion one last time after everyone left. The house echoed again, but differently now. Not empty, clean. He walked through each room slowly, memories rising and falling like tides. He stopped in the bedroom, then the study, then the foyer where Vanessa had once kissed another man beneath his portrait. He took the portrait down himself. Weeks later, the mansion was sold. The proceeds donated quietly to causes Adrian had supported long before Vanessa ever knew his name. He moved into a modest penthouse downtown, overlooking streets full of strangers who didn't know his story. Vanessa's story, however, followed her everywhere. Court dates, frozen accounts, a future reduced to legal strategy and regret. Caleb resurfaced briefly, arrested on unrelated charges, his name buried in records that no longer mattered. One afternoon, months later, Vanessa requested a meeting. Adrian considered it longer than he expected. They met in a neutral room. No warmth, no hostility, just distance. "You won," she said softly. Adrian shook his head. This wasn't a competition. She studied him. "Then why do I feel like I lost everything?" Adrian stood. "Because you mistook access for ownership and love for leverage." He left without looking back. That night, Adrian stood on his balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below. He thought about trust, about loyalty, about how quickly people revealed themselves when consequences felt distant. He had faked his death to find the truth. What he found was simpler than he expected. Some people don't mourn loss. They calculate opportunity, and when given enough rope, they don't need help falling. Time passed, but the story refused to die. In boardrooms, investors still lowered their voices when Adrian Blackwell's name came up. Not out of fear, out of respect. The kind that comes from knowing a man doesn't act on impulse, doesn't threaten, doesn't warn. He simply lets people reveal themselves, then responds with precision. Adrian never gave interviews, never corrected headlines, never explained himself. Silence, he knew, was more powerful than defense. He rebuilt his life the same way he rebuilt his empire, carefully, intentionally, without spectacle. The penthouse became home, not because it was luxurious, but because it was honest. No echoes of betrayal, no memories staged for performance, just glass, steel, and a city that didn't ask questions. Sometimes, late at night, Adrian replayed the early days in his mind. The way Vanessa used to laugh at small things. The way she once held his hand in traffic like it mattered. He didn't romanticize it. He examined it, like data from a failed experiment. Love, he learned, isn't proven by words spoken when things are stable. It's revealed when comfort disappears. Vanessa learned that lesson too, just from the opposite side of the fall. Her life shrank slowly, painfully. The investigations concluded. Sentences were measured, assets dissolved, friends vanished. She moved from penthouses to apartments where neighbors didn't know her name and didn't care to learn it. The city that once opened doors now closed them quietly. One evening she stood in line at a grocery store, counting cash in her palm. The woman ahead of her complained about prices. The man behind her sighed impatiently. No one noticed Vanessa Hale. No one recognized the woman who once walked through marble halls and spoke in confident absolutes. She caught her reflection in the freezer glass. Older, smaller, real. For the first time, there was no audience. That was when the regret arrived. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady and heavy. She didn't regret losing the money. She regretted how easily she had traded truth for advantage. How quickly she had chosen certainty over loyalty, how she had destroyed her own life with her own hands. Across the city, Adrian attended a quiet fundraiser, no press, no speeches. He stood beside a woman named Claire, an architect with steady eyes and an unremarkable last name. She knew exactly who Adrian was. She knew his history. She never asked for explanations. That was why he trusted her. "Do you ever think about it?" Claire asked softly as they watched the skyline from the terrace. Adrian considered the question. "I think about what it taught me. And what did it teach you?" "That love doesn't need testing," he said. "Only honesty." Claire nodded, accepting the answer without probing further. That night, Adrian returned home alone and stood at his window. He watched traffic flow like blood through the city's veins, millions of lives intersecting, millions of choices being made quietly, without witnesses. He thought about the test he had designed, about the man he had been before he needed certainty, and about the man he had become after learning the truth. Adrian Blackwell never faked his death again. He didn't need to, because once you understand human nature, once you see how quickly people abandon what they claim to value, you stop searching for proof. You start building boundaries. The story, however, lived on, not as romance, not as tragedy, but as a warning whispered in business circles and private conversations. Some people don't love you. They love the version of life you provide. And when that version disappears, so do they. Vanessa would hear echoes of that truth everywhere, in silence, in missed opportunities, in nights where sleep didn't come easily. She tried to rebuild, tried to explain, tried to justify. But some losses don't offer redemption arcs, only lessons. 1 year to the day after Adrian walked back into the mansion, he received a letter. No return address, just handwriting he recognized instantly. It was short. I thought love meant security. I was wrong. I hope you're at peace. Adrian folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer he rarely opened. He felt no anger, no satisfaction, just closure. And maybe that was the real ending, because in a world obsessed with appearances, power, and comfort, the most dangerous thing a person can do is reveal who they truly are when they think no one is watching. Vanessa did. So did Adrian. Only one of them survived the truth.